is your Money Moves Wednesday edition live from FMDQ studios in Lagos. I am Bosin Omofaye.
And I am Melissa Enoch. Welcome, everyone, and we say thank you very much for joining us at this time on the program.
All right, let's get the show started in Mozambique, where the annual meetings of the Africa 50 starts today in Maputo. Now, speaking at the opening formalities of the meetings, the Mozambican President Daniel Chapo says the country who aligns with the objectives of Africa 50, subsidiary of the AFDB, which was created a few years ago. Mozambique is a member of the Africa 50 and is looking to increase funding support, especially the infrastructure associated with the country's multi-billion-dollar natural gas project. All right, in the meantime,
this general meeting has more significance for Mozambique, but also for the African continent. Africa 50 is more than a financial institution. It is a African solutions platform for African challenges, a mechanism generated to accelerate investment in energy, transportation, digitalization, and logistics in Africa. Since Mozambique joined Africa 50 in 2024, we became part of a shared vision to build an interconnected Africa, a competitive Africa, able to transform its resources into prosperity for the peoples. We have assets on energy, we have assets on transportation, due to our geographical location, digitalization, of course, ever since we have now a ministry dedicated to it, because the world is going towards that trend.
Listed agro-allied company known as Ella Lakes PLC has unveiled a multi-million naira crude palm oil refinery. The new processing mill is expected to boost Nigeria's agro-industrial capacity and bridge the gap between agriculture production and market supply, while creating jobs, reducing palm oil imports, and drive local economic growth. Ella Lakes recently secured a shareholders' approval to raise 250 billion naira for strategic acquisition while converting some existing directors' loans into equity. Palm oil is currently trading slightly above $1,000 at the global spot market. Now, Melissa is standing by at the FMDQ archives for more of today's news now. Hi there, Melissa.
Hello there, Bosin, and thank you very much. BTC, an Egyptian gold and precious metals company, has launched a new strategy aimed at strengthening the local silver sector and expand its market presence. News report says the Egypt silver market is experiencing a notable comeback, fueled by rising global demand, increased industrial applications, and renewed interest in precious metals as a secure saving option amid global economic shifts. The BTC chairman, Hassan Nassar, says that Egypt still holds untapped opportunities with increased demand and evolving trends. BTC is part of the KPM Group and the first specialized company in Egypt to manufacture and produce gold and silver. In monetary policy news, the Namibia Central Bank today held the country's benchmark interest rate at 6.75%, marking a third straight hold decision. The financial regulator says it wants to safeguard its currency, the Namibian dollar, against the fluctuations in the South African rand, which is closely tied to its economy. Let's now hear more of the rate decision.
To continue safeguarding the peg between the Namibia dollar and the South African rand, while supporting the domestic economy, the MPC unanimously decided to keep the repo rate unchanged at 6.75%. This policy stance was informed after a thorough review of current and projected domestic, regional, and global economic developments. Let us consider domestic economic developments that inform this decision. The domestic economy maintained positive momentum during the first 6 months of 2025. Domestic inflation has remained subdued since the previous MPC meeting, while growth and private sector credit extension improved further. The merchandise trade deficit has continued to narrow, while the stock of international reserves has remained sufficient to maintain the currency peg and meet the country's international financial obligations.
In Kenya, the Central Bank Monetary Policy Team, led by the governor, Dr. Kamau Thugge, has slashed the policy rate by 25 basis points. That decision on Tuesday took Kenya's headline rate down to 9.50% from 9.75% previously. Kenya has cut its lending rate for 7 consecutive times, looking to support the flagging economy of the President Ruto's administration.
The Monetary Policy Committee decided to lower the central bank rate by 25 basis points to 9.5% from 9.75%. The committee observed that the overall inflation is expected to remain below the midpoint of the target range in the near term, and this will be supported by lower food inflation, stability in energy prices, and the continued exchange rate stability. They also observed that central banks in the major economies have continued to lower interest rates, but at a more cautious and uneven pace depending on inflation and growth outlooks. The average lending rates in the domestic market have continued to decline, while private sector credit growth has continued to improve, although the pace has been less than desirable. The committee therefore concluded that there was scope for a further easing of the monetary policy stance to augment the previous policy actions aimed at stimulating lending by banks to the private sector and supporting economic activity, while ensuring that inflationary expectations remained firmly anchored and that the exchange rate remained stable.
In the meantime, a new report on the Africa's digital banking experience has been released. The first edition of the report for 2025, which was put together by Backbase and the African Banker magazine, examines how banks are moving from transactional models to AI-powered platforms. The study draws on a survey of more than 200 senior banking executives from 40 African countries. Finally, on today's News Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria has held a town hall meeting with banks and other financial institutions, as well as key sector stakeholders in Lagos. The forum was designed to deepen financial inclusion, banking sector education, provide updates on key CBN policies and actions, among others. Let's take excerpts from the opening comments of the Acting Director of Communications of the CBN, Sidi Hakama.
Over the past 22 months, the bank has, among others, rolled out the following functional policies to strengthen the financial system. Exchange rate unification. This is to minimize arbitrage opportunities and reduce volatility in the foreign exchange market. Over $7 billion of verified backlog of Forex forwards have also been cleared. The launch of the Nigerian Forex Exchange Code. The code is a set of principles of good practices in the Nigerian foreign exchange market based on 6 pillars: ethics, governance, execution, information sharing, risk management and compliance, for confirmation and settlement processes. Bank recapitalization to strengthen the resilience and global competitiveness of the banking sector, positioning it to support the $1 trillion economy. The launch of the non-resident BVN, the RBVN, to connect Nigerians abroad with home banking. Over the past 20...
I am Melissa Enoch, and that's it on News Now. Stick around for our market rounds with Bosin at the Ticker Tape Room.
I'm Bosin Namofaye, and welcome back to Money Moves as we track today's trading day, beginning with the equities market. And you can just see that very big jump in South Africa's GSE All-Share Index, more than 1% for the third trading day this week, as we saw yesterday. The proposals that South Africa is putting forward for the Trump's administration in Washington as far as the tariff hike on South Africa's exports to United States is concerned. So that was in the news. The market's a bit enthused with those proposals and whether there could be a bit of a resolution between South Africa and United States anytime soon. So the stock market took that up at 102,419.31 for the All-Share Index today. The market really up. And of course, you've got a couple of corporate news and earnings from the South African market rallying the GSE on the upside. Zimbabwe's stock market came back from that public holiday Tuesday to 0.07% today for midweek trading. The Nigerian equities market bucked what we saw over the past couple of sessions by 13 basis points today. That's 145.865 on the All-Share Index. The Egyptian market also pulled back by 0.4% at 35,855. The BRVM, the only French-speaking exchange in West Africa, covering the 8 French-speaking West African countries, was better by 0.57%. Nairobi was up by roughly 0.5%. You got a couple of earnings coming through. Absa, Kenya, KCB Group also today revealed a very robust earnings for the first half of the year, declaring an interim dividend of 4 Kenyan shillings per share. That drove the share, that drove the part of the market up. They're splitting that 4 shillings dividend into 2, a special dividend and a cash dividend. All that on the back of the sale of the National Bank, one of its subsidiaries, to Access Bank of Kenya. All that in the news today for the Kenyan equities market. But let's move on and check through the government bonds for the day. Look at the South Africa's 10-year paper, printing 9.620%. That's 0.47% negative. That's some good news for South Africa, as it were. But of course, if those bonds are priced lower, that in terms of yield, well, investors would have to look at that. If you're investing in that, you want higher yield, by the way. But if you're the one paying, of course, the lower the yield, the better for you. And of course, the rest of the numbers look at a Mauritius 10-year paper printing 5.5%. That's 0.36% on the upside. Kenyan 10-year paper just one notch at 13.393%. Let's look into currencies. Yesterday, South Africa's rand was trading around 17.75, now trading 17.53 today, 0.29% on the dollar. The naira recovered slightly today against the US dollar, 1,531.8 from where we finished off late Tuesday, by 0.13%. The Kenyan shilling sticking around 129 to the US dollar the morning after the central bank decided to cut interest rate from 9.75% to 9.5%, as you heard earlier from Dr. Kamal Tuji and the rest of his monetary policy team, to support the flagging President Ruto's economy. And finally, it is CFA franc in West Africa, 560.19 on the dollar, 0.59%. A little bit of a green shoot there for that currency here in West Africa. Let's take it to the global oil market, with International Energy Agency saying that there's still a bit of a room for global oil market. Prices went slightly up today, 0.09% for the London Brent, and US WTI about 0.03%. Those sluggish gains started coming up after the further confirmation that President Trump and Putin's meeting will take place on Friday in Alaska. We're expecting a virtual meeting between today and tomorrow, according to news sources, between President Trump, leaders of the European Union, and of course President Zelensky of Ukraine. All that in the heads up to, of course, the meeting on Friday expected between Trump and President Putin. If all that goes through as planned, and it's a ceasefire, or at least a pullback from the brink, as it were, in Ukraine, then all of that could be a major boost for Oil supply, by the way, prices could go lower. United States looking at oil prices around $50 a barrel. That's not something folks within the OPEC would want to hear. But let's move on to metals. As we look at gold prices now, around $3,408.6 an ounce. That's 0.28% today. After that, a pullback for about 1%. On Tuesday, the market came back slightly. Today, sentiments begin to move up a little bit again with the outlook on U.S. Fed interest rate decision later in September and, of course, November. How soon the Fed under Jerome Powell will cut before he finally leaves office. Aluminum, about $2,629 an ounce, 0.37%. Iron ore, 102.41. Copper, down by 12 basis points, $4.52. That's around 13-14 GMT. Now, let's put it all together for you around the soft commodities just to wrap up the show this evening here in Lagos. Cocoa trading 8,487. There's a tightness in terms of supply out of Cote d'Ivoire. News coming out that Cote d'Ivoire is cutting back on its cocoa exports to the global market. 2.09% downside for a per metric ton at 13.24. Coffee prices 315.74. Robusta coffee is coming very strongly from Brazil. That's according to news sources today. 2.40% for coffee prices up. You know, we're talking about Robusta coffee vis-a-vis the Arabica coffee. So you need to consider Arabica coffee and Robusta coffee between Brazil and Vietnam, two major coffee producers in the world. And of course, you come to Africa, such as Ethiopia, Uganda, and others. Cotton prices 67.94, 0.66% in the red. Palm oil sticking around that $1,000 as the new psychological level, $1,038. 1.16%. Nigeria is looking to get into that game. You heard in news earlier. LLX, which is listed on the Nigerian exchange, is floating a new crude palm oil refinery to support local production of a palm oil and reduce Nigeria's dollar import of a finished product into the country. And finally, sugar trading slightly around $17 handle, down by 0.18%. And those are the markets numbers for your Money Moves markets today, the third trading day of the week. It's a Wednesday, everyone. Have a great day. Bye for now. From the rest of us here at the FMDQ Exchange, we thank you for watching.